That is terrifying.
Yeah, so that's from the video, the Greenland trip.
Right.
And when we did that trip, the main thing of the trip was to go into the Moulin on the Greenland ice cap, and it was a two-part shoot or two-part project. We had to go there in August when it was warm and sunny, and fly out. And before this picture's taken, we spent several days on the ice cap exploring to find where the Moulins were, with a glaciologist, Jason Goalie, who's a scientist who was kind of the main guy studying these glaciers. So he kind of keyed us into where the Moulins were, and we discovered one that had all the water flowing into it because it's warm in the summer. And we knew we had to go back in October when it froze up and the water's no longer flowing, and we can actually go into the Moulin safely without water pouring in it. So this was in August in Greenland, and after we discovered where the Moulin was, we went back to Inuit, which is on Disco Bay on the west coast of Greenland. And being, with professional ice climber and icebergs floating everywhere from right outside of town, we pretty much knew we were going to go try to shoot some ice climbing on icebergs. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the caveat of what we were doing, like the fun part of it. And this was the result of that. Was we spent, I think, 2 days just out on a boat out on the bay exploring icebergs, and this was one of the images we got of him climbing on the iceberg.
So cool. That's really rad. Jeez. Christian, I keep reminding myself that you're putting yourself in these damn situations too. It's one thing to look at this and you're like, oh, and then you're like, this guy's so extreme, and you're like, wait, but to get the shot, it's not like you're walking up on a set or standing on the shoreline or doing anything like that. You are embedding yourself within these moments as well. It's crazy.
Yeah, so this was that same trip or same job, but this was when we went back in October when we can actually go into the Moulin. So when we went there in August, and I actually got to kind of hang over the edge of this Moulin with the water flowing into it. You can only go maybe 20 feet down, otherwise you're going to get soaked by the spray of the water. But I just looked into this abyss of this this glacial cavity, knowing that we were going to go back and we're going to descend, potentially 200 meters down into that thing. Mm-hmm. So it was rather unnerving for me leading up to the second trip, and telling my wife kind of what was going on, but trying to keep it,
Yeah, of course.
Because you're in this environment where big chunks of ice could just break off at any moment. You have no control over that. So it was kind of for me leading up to that second trip, going back to Greenland. It was one of the more nerve-wracking trips I was going on, knowing where I was going and what I was going to do. And this was actually kind of the tail end of that trip after we'd spent 3 or 4 days down in that glacier. And this particular image was actually the second to last day we were there. We were actually getting flown out the next day, and we'd done everything as far as the exploring the glacier and what we needed to do from the science aspect of things. And actual ice climbing wasn't the number one priority of this trip. That was more of the exploration. So we kind of got all that stuff out of the way. And then now it's like, all right, we got some time to go do some ice climbing.
Nice.
And so Will is actually descending a rope and kind of figuring out where he can climb, which is literally right about where I took this photo, close to the exit of the Moulin. And I rappelled down way below him, just looking up at him, coming in and just kind of exploring. And it kind of just reveals to me, I had a lot of images looking up, descending into the darkness. But this one for me, just the shaft of blue going into the darkness. I'm in a tunnel, and I shot it with a fisheye lens, 15 millimeter fisheye. So it was really the only way to encapsulate everything was to use the fisheye. Yeah. For me, it kind of, this image just kind of encapsulated that whole experience, being in this eerie, crazy ice tube Moulin thing we're at.
Jeez, that is not something that normal people go to. So to be able to hear it from your perspective and you to be able to capture these images is something very surreal. So thank you.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this too is we had brought a glaciologist with us who spent endless amount of time studying the glaciers and the water melt off on the Greenland ice cap. and he had never gone inside a glacier like this. And on this trip, because he just didn't have the technical skill to do that.
Yeah,
it takes it takes years of technical skill, ice climbing to know how to do this kind of stuff. And during the course of this trip, he'd done caving and do stuff like that. But Will basically taught him how to go into these things safely and kind of lined up the do's and the don'ts. And since then, Jason Goyle, who's the glaciologist, has since returned back to Greenland, to the ice cap. And now he's going into these things and furthering his research as well. And he's got the confidence in the know-abouts to do this kind of stuff himself too. And he's bringing in other scientists down into these glaciers to where, for up until now, they've always studied them by dropping instruments down in them. And so for these scientists to actually have the knowledge to go into these glaciers, it's pretty remarkable,
Yeah, absolutely. Must make a huge difference from studying it from the outside or sides or different things like that to be able to go inside of it like this is a whole nother world. That's insane. So we're going to flip through a couple more a little quicker. We're just running out of time here, but thanks everyone for joining us. We could talk for hours, but as we just go through these, so same trip.
And that's the same spot, basically just looking down as opposed to looking up. So drastic perspective difference just on just where I position myself, So he's basically in about the same spot as he was in that last picture, give or take. And this was, for me, this was kind of a highlight of this trip. After exploring inside the glacier, was to actually get like a proper ice climb photographs.
Jeez. Beautiful. I mean, just your colors and everything right there. Really, using that lens, when I shoot a lot of surf and I'm going to put the fisheye, I'm looking for a different shot. But with yours, you're really putting us there by using that wider lens as opposed to a 50 or something like that. It just wouldn't work in these situations. But using that wide angle is really putting us as if we're sitting right there with them and being able to see the magnitude of what you're seeing there. So. Incredible.
Yeah, and that's the fisheye again, and that's exactly it. Was being able to because it was super tight quarters that we're working in, and putting on the fisheye just opened everything up and just gave you that visual of actually being there, which a 16 millimeter or 24 millimeter would have you would have lost the hole and the depth going in. Yep. So I don't use the fisheye often, but when used properly, it's a great lens. It's definitely something to have and fall back on when needed.
Absolutely. Hey, there's the guy.
Selfie.
Nice. Proof that you are up there shooting these photos.
Yeah. My wife looks at this. She's like, you got to work on your selfie face. You learn how to smile in front of the camera.
That's great.
I feel uncomfortable when I point the camera at myself.
No, you need these moments like that to remind yourself, and it's wonderful. Ice pick in hand. Shoot.
Yeah, that's another one with my son.
Wow.
And that was he loves to fish, and this was, I think, like in March or April. We still had snow in the mountains and crazy weather, and this is just down valley from where we live. And I kind of had to bribe him a little bit because he wanted to be doing something else, fishing. And I saw the clouds, the mountains, and I had my 70 to 200, and all right, I got to get this shot.
Yeah,
I'm like, you got to go to that bank and go fish right there for me
before the storm comes in. Get out there.
Yeah. I think I had to bribe him with an ice cream cone or something like that. Like, hey, you gotta just go fish that hole where we fished there earlier, and we caught a fish right there. Go back there. So it was fun. It's hanging with my son, getting out in the mountains for me. It's some of the most precious moments there are.
Yeah. Is this close to your home, Christian?
It is. It's like it's like 10 minutes away.
Oh,
it's
man.
basically our backyard.
I need to come visit. This is just insane. That's insane.
Yeah, I live in a kind of adventure paradise in the mountains. It's pretty nice where I'm at. I'm pretty lucky.
Wow. This be conceptual to the moment of like making reality, because this isn't by chance you went out there to be able to create create, capture, and get all of it. It's something much planned and going. And I think that's what people don't always realize when they see an image or some of these works, how much of that back end planning, the weather, figuring out the meteorite, figuring out all of these things and how they lined up. You didn't just plop your tripod and be like, yep, this is a spot. You probably checked this out with a little scouting ahead of time. Tell us a little bit about your weather and prep, please.
Yeah, this one took a lot of prep. And obviously we all know about the comet Neowise that was here like 6 weeks ago. And I started seeing pictures of the comet on Instagram, and I was just like, okay, it's a cool star in the sky. I like sleeping at nighttime. I don't like getting up in the middle of the night. And I kept seeing photos pop up on my feed for a few days. I'm like, maybe I should motivate to go shoot this thing. And I actually went to go one night, and it was cloudy, just shoot it, like a traditional landscape photographer, and got weathered out or whatever, or the sun was too bright and you couldn't see it. And the whole time when I saw these comet photos, I had in my head, I was like, okay, the best shot for me is you got a rock climber up on a rock face, and I had this vision in my head, and I think this is kind of what I want to do. So then there's not a whole lot of rock climbers that are comfortable with going down high off the ground without a rope. I mean, this guy is a really good friend of mine, Lonnie Kalk, who's amazing. He's a free soloist, kind of like does a lot of stuff like Alex Honnold does, goes, thousands of feet off the ground without a rope. So he's got the confidence to go do that. And him and I have taken a lot of amazing photos over the years, basically passion projects, just going out and creating these magical moments, on bouldering. So I conceptually visualized this in my head, and I had a location, kind of an idea, and I went out the day before this to scout it in the evening. It ran around, and I knew this rock, and funny enough, I hadn't been to this actual rock formation. It had been like since the 90s I had been to this exact formation, and I kind of forgot where it was, and I went to a different rock formation. So I ran around and found a bunch of potential shots that would get this, him on the skyline with the comet. But the thing was that night it was cloudy, so I could never see the comet. I had an idea where the comet was at. I knew it was going to be that part of the sky. So I was kind of visualizing all this, but never really had like the slam dunk. Like, okay, I took the photo with the rock. There's the comet. This is the time. It's a done deal. Let's go back and make it happen.
Gotcha.
So then I talked to Ronnie, and he's like, I told him where I was at. And he's like, well, that's not the traditional boulder. I know, I couldn't find it. And he's like, it's over here. And I'm like, all right, let's go tonight. So I went out like 2 hours before sunset and scouted again, found this boulder and found where he could climb it. And I was like, okay, now I think the comet's going to be over here. And then he showed up right as it started getting dark. And I'm like, all right, this is it. And he looked at it and he's like, okay, this will work. And I can climb to here safely. And he's basically climbing in the dark. He's got a headlamp on, so he would climb up with his headlamp on, and then right when it was time to take the picture, I'd be like, okay, you got to turn the headlamp off, because interesting, when I used lights for this, I was just using traditional flashes, like on-camera flashes. I have a super fast flash duration, because this is like a 8 or 10 second exposure. So like a traditional strobe, the flash duration is not fast enough to freeze the action. So I would pop him with the flash, and he'd hold still for 8 seconds in that moment just to make sure it stayed super crispy. And then I would look at the camera, we probably did like 15 different takes of this. And, ironically, what I had visualized in my head came to fruition with this, with him kind of, on the horizon of the sky, with the sky behind him. And we got lucky. There were clouds that night, but they kind of drifted away. So the comet, you were able to see the comet.
So sick. That's beautiful. Yeah. What a great story to say that too. I mean, all the preparation. A lot of luck involved, a lot of planning. Yeah, of course. So, always a little luck involved, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Wow.
And that's the same, after capturing that comet shot of the rock climbing, it was still happening. And I was like, this is a good friend of mine. I've done a lot of photo shoots with, mostly running photo shoots, Tammy. And I said, hey, let's go shoot some running shots with the comet. And she says, yeah, I'm game. Let's go do it. So we went out. It's probably like 4 nights later after that other photo. And it turned out to be really challenging to line up everything and to freeze her running, because, running is a lot more dynamic than a rock climber who's kind of still. So it was really hard to actually freeze her. I was actually able to get a couple decent shots of her running. And at the end, when it was kind of all done, just about wrapping it up, I'm like, hey, she's standing right there. I'm like, just put your hand out and hold the comet. It's kind of like an impromptu moment,
That's so cool.
I'm like, wait, just your hand a little higher. And we did about 4 takes before she had her hand perfectly. And then I'm like, all right. She was looking at me, and I'm like, no, look down at your hand like you're looking at the comet, And we just kind of rattled through a bunch of shots, but we finally got this one. I'm like, oh, this is the fun one. This is great. And so we ended up just a fun photo,
Yeah, beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
Another just.
And that's actually the same girl, Tammy.
Okay.
This was for Red Bull. It was an event they had, Wings for Life, which everybody runs at the same time throughout the world.
Yep.
And they did it this year, but they did it online or virtual, I guess, is how they had to do it, because you couldn't technically do it during the lockdown.
Yep.
And they wanted someone to shoot some photos of it in the mountains where I live. So I got the call, and it was like a last minute thing. And they're like, can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, let me see if I can get a couple runners, and called up Tammy, and she's always game. And I'm like, hey, we got to get up at like 3 a.m. because it starts at like 4, from when we're supposed to start running. And it's kind of, same thing. It was off camera flash, just your basic speed flash, just off behind that rock. And she's just kind of running around the corner, and zapped her with the flash is set to like the lowest power setting, like 1/64th or even less than that, because it's so dark out. And same thing, I think it's like an 8 or 10 second exposure, but because that flash is such a fast duration, it freezes the subject. And I was able to get this image.
Very powerful. I love that.
Yeah, and that's literally, right out my back door. I mean, as the crow flies, it's about 400 meters from my house. So it's kind of like, thankful to be able to do something like this so close to home, and be able to live in a place where I can do,
what a place to live.
Kind of right out my backyard. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Oh, I love this series of this rampage. I mean, I've always seen your shots from there, and it's terrifying what they're doing on the bike. So, I mean,
it's insane. This is hands down. I shoot a lot of events, and this is hands down probably the raddest, most insane thing as far as an event that I shoot. What these guys are doing is completely next level. And this particular image is with the strobe, say an L-chrome strobe, not the same one, but from years ago, like an older version. But we got lucky this particular day in this venue. They change the venue every few years, and for this venue, we actually had a feature where you can kind of see Zion and the mountains in the background, as opposed to just kind of like the desert plains, which is traditionally the background. So one afternoon, a bunch of the riders decided to session this one jump, and they just kept hitting it. So
nice.
There were a whole bunch of photographers. Everybody had lights popped up everywhere, and we had to get 30, 40 minutes of these guys sessioning this jump and being able to pop off all these photos.
Nice.
And I for this image, I had the 70 to 200, and was able to get back and probably shooting 100 millimeter and kind of compress the mountains and show kind of the amplitude of what he was doing. And he's in the it's sunny behind him, but he's in the shade, so the flash definitely lit him up and popped it. So without the flash, it was kind of more like a silhouette shot,
Oh, gotcha.
So, and of all the rampage photos I've shot, this is probably one of my most favorite images from shooting it almost 18 times. I've been doing it. Yeah.
Gorgeous shot. And this is our last photo, guys, that we have coming up here, and it is spectacularly terrifying. What is going on? There's a lot going on here, huh? This is a scary place to be at night.
This has got a good story behind it.
Give it to us.
So this is taken here in Mammoth Mountain. On the backside of the mountains, a run called Hole in the Wall, and it's kind of this. It's not on technically on the ski resort. It's kind of out of the boundary. but the locals know it, and people know about this run. And it's actually you actually ski through a cave and come out the other end. So it's like an arch, but more like a cave and a hole right through the rock. And it's a cool run. And it's kind of, I won't say it's like a signature thing, but it's, it's amongst the locals and people at Ski Mammoth. It's like, hole in the wall, let's go ski a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
Super unique thing to be able to do. And I've skied it a bunch, and this is a really good friend of mine, Bernie Rousseau, who's an amazing skier and one of the most photogenic skiers I've ever worked with. And him and I have got a collection of great photos, and like a lot of my friends, he's just game to get out and shoot cool photos. And I had visualized this shot in my head for years. It's like, I want to shoot a hole in the wall, but I want to light it up with a flat or with a strobe. Yeah. And I want to shoot up so you can see where you're coming. And for this shot, it's a fisheye, so it's wide enough so you can actually see that it's a cave, and that's that's an arch. And we got to get it when the snow is just perfect, which mostly this runs low on the mountain, and it's east facing, so it's usually rock hard, sun-baked snow. This year it was March. It was a huge winter, and it was snowing like crazy. It snowed probably a foot or two the whole week, every day leading up to this day. And then on this day, it snowed 2 or 3 feet that day. And I called up my friend Bernie, and I'm like, he knew what we wanted to do. I'm like, hey, we got to get that shot tonight. Tonight's the night to get the shot. I'm leaving to Europe tomorrow, and I'm gone for 2 weeks, and it's gonna be spring when we get back, and this is our window to get the shot. So he's all right, let's do it. So we went up there at like 4 or 5 p.m. as it's starting to get dark, and we had to hike up. We couldn't come in from the top, so we had to hike up. And as we're hiking up, the snow was so deep that we had to use our skins and our skis, kind of like cross-country skiing, going up. And because there was so much deep snow, we weren't able to actually hike boot pack straight up along the edge to keep our track out of the shot. And as we're going up, it was the only way we can get up because the snow was so deep, is that we put this, it's called a skin track, and it's just like a zigzag going right through where the picture was going to be taken. And I was just like, there's nothing we can do about it. And it's there. Yeah. And as we skinned up through and we got to the edge inside the cave, like I said, it was snowing so hard. All of a sudden this avalanche happened, and it just this rumbling of snow comes ripping down through where we were just hiking, and we're off to the side and just flushes through the whole thing and clears away. And we look over, and it's just this perfect blanket of powder snow after the avalanche. It flushed clean. We're like, oh my God, it's perfect. It's ready to go. So he hiked up a little further, and I hiked down in position. And with a strobe like this, you get one shot. It's a one-shot deal. You click it, the flash goes off, and there's no sequence. And I knew I had to get it on the first take because once he skied it once, his track was going to be in it. Of course. And he nailed the turn perfect, and lucky for me, the timing was just right on. Like a split second later, he was buried in snow, and you wouldn't see him. A split second earlier, he's his a little high in the turn, and a lot of fortuitous luck came into play on to get this image.
And experience.
Yeah.
Oh, what a story. Geez. I mean, that just couldn't have planned for that, and having all that snow come through, clear your tracks, and give you a fresh slate on that.
It was pretty lucky, and fortunate we weren't in the line of fire when that kind of avalanche came through. Otherwise, it would have taken us down the mountain a couple hundred feet. I mean, it wouldn't have killed us, but it would have definitely put it into the shoot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey man, thank you so much, Christian, for being here. This has been incredible and so inspiring to see all your work and hear the stories. And any last words before we sign off here?
I appreciate you taking the time to do this, Zach. It's awesome to chat with you about this, and I've admired your photography for years. So to have a conversation with someone like yourself, someone I have so much respect for, it's super cool to sit and chat about the photos and the process, because coming from you, you got an appreciation of what goes behind it, and it's just it's an honor to be here, sitting here having this conversation with you, to say the least.
I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for your time to be able to be here and share these stories and those kind words, man. That's really epic. So don't forget, next year when we can travel again, I'm coming there and you're coming here, and we're going to do like a little role switch, and I'll take you out to shoot surf here, and we'll shoot some snow and stuff there. So we'll definitely do that. But man, I really appreciate your time and had a good time today. So, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next week on Between Sets. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Between Sets. Make sure to like and subscribe to be tuned in on all future episodes. Thank you.